Hi, welcome. So today I'm going to be doing a B service on this 2020 Mercedes SLC300 behind me. I've done a previous video on an A service. I'm going to try to make this one a little bit better than that one was. The A and the B are pretty similar, so I'm going to go through the checklist, all the items that we have to do, and what an A service and a B service encompass. And then I'm going to go through and do them, and I'll show as much of it as I can on the camera. So one thing to understand, a lot of people complain about the cost of Mercedes-Benz service. They are doing quite a bit of work. Not all of it is necessary from a car guy perspective, but you also have to remember that, you know, these are service advisors that are working on cars that most people don't really care about or think about. These are people that are getting in these cars and driving them every day. So they're not your average enthusiast that kind of knows what's going on with their car. So service for Mercedes-Benz is divided into, I would say, 4 different categories. There's an A service. Well, there are items that need to be done on every single service. There are items that only need to be done on the A service or the B service. There are items that are vehicle specific, and there are items that are mileage specific. So, first off, we have the things that need to be done on every single service. And a lot of these are checks. So we have to check for warnings in the instrument cluster. We're going to check that the lights in the instrument cluster work. We're going to check the light inside the trunk, check the windshield washer fluid, check the condition of the exterior of the vehicle, check the condition of the windshield, check the condition of the wiper blades, check the brake fluid, check the coolant level, check the tire tread, check the brake pads, check the brake discs, check the tire pressure, check the spare tire pressure. If the car does not have a spare tire, then you need to check the tire sealant expiration, check TPMS, check the first aid kit expiration, replace the battery in both keys, fill up DEF fluid if you're driving a diesel vehicle, check that the driving aids are functional, reset the service indicator, check the parking brake, and do an oil and filter change, oil and oil filter change. On A services, for the SLC, it adds checking the emergency brake, which it needs to be done on every A and every B, so I would just classify that as an every service. On B services only, which is every other, so the cars go A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B. So on a B service, we have to check the headlamp setting, so the height and the position of the headlamps. Check the exterior lighting function, so make sure that all of the lights are working. Check the windshield wiper function. Replace the cabin air filter, meaning the internal air filter for the HVAC system. Visually check the engine bay for any wear, leaks, loose components, anything like that. Check belt wear, so the accessory belts. Check for leaks under the vehicle. Check the tires for damage. Check the tie rods for damage. Check the ball joints for damage. Check the propeller shaft for damage, so the rear drive shaft. Check the rear axle for damage. Check the struts and springs for damage. Check the power steering fluid level. And a brake fluid replacement is also recommended. So this one is kind of, I don't want to say it's optional, but a lot of dealers view it as optional. So there are a lot of dealerships that sell an A service for like $199, a B service for $299, and then they do the brake fluid as an optional service. If you choose to do it, it's whatever it is. I think it's like $300 usually at my dealership. So it's a separate thing. Mercedes-Benz recommends that you do it every other, depending on how the vehicle's driven and, you know, who's driving it, the weather conditions, how the vehicle is kept, a lot of other things. You can extend that out if you need to. That one isn't very difficult to do. I've done it before. On this vehicle, we only have like 14,000 miles on it. So even though it's our second service because it's been 2 years, I'm going to let that one go for another year before I do the brake fluid. At 50,000 miles, I'm supposed to do the engine air filter. So every 50,000 engine air filter, not before that. And the spark plugs. At 60,000 miles, change the transmission fluid. And at 150,000 miles, change the coolant. I'm going to modify this very slightly myself. I do, at every oil change or every service, I do the engine air filter. I don't wait for 50,000 miles. It's not expensive enough for me to want to keep that thing under the hood for that length of time. I change it every single time I do the service. I also do the cabin air filter every single service instead of every B service like they recommend. So I'm doing it more often than what they're recommending. And then last but not least, I'm going to not do the brakes at this B service because the B service is supposed to be 2 years or 20,000 miles. I'm going to wait until year 3 when we're a little over 20,000 miles, and we'll do the brake fluid at that time. And I'll do a separate video on that because it's a process to do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through all of the checks. I'm going to check all of the devices, all the things that I said. I'm going to try to put a link in the description for a Google Sheets document that has this laid out so that you can download a copy of it for yourself. I'm going to say in advance that this is not like, this came from the official Mercedes-Benz maintenance guide, but it might not be exact for your vehicle and it might change over time, and I'm not going to commit to keeping it up to date. So just, you know, take it with a grain of salt. It's good right now, and that's all I'm going to commit to. So let me go through all the checks. All right, so we've completed all of our visual checks. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start changing the oil. All right, so engine bay's a mess. I need to clean it the next time I wash the car, apparently. I didn't realize how messy it was because I haven't been under here in a bit. So we want to check fluid levels. So let's look at the bay. So right here we've got our brake fluid level. We can visually inspect this from outside. There's a max line right here, and we're right at the max line. Our windshield washer fluid goes in here, so we'll top that off. Our coolant reservoir is where we're supposed to check the level, and that is right here. Maybe you should do this with it cold. And that level looks good. And our other coolant reservoir is back here. That looks good. Power steering fluid is up here. And I am right on the cold line. The power steering fluid is a little below the min, so we're going to have to top that off. And we're going to add our coolant, or our windshield washer fluid here. This is McKee's N914, diluted 128:1. It's what I tend to use as windshield washer fluid in all of our cars. We live in California. We don't have a lot of snow or salt or anything like that to worry about. So top that off. That's done. Okay. So next, we're going to start the oil. And you can change oil in this like a traditional car, where you go underneath it and you pull the drain plug and you take the oil out. And then you come up here and you fill it up. I actually like to do everything from the top on these cars. And I'll show you how I do that using an oil extractor. So this comes off. Start off with the air filter. Air filter's over here. It's a Torx. Okay, so 2 T20s in the top here. It might be a T25. T20 worked well. And then the air filter can come out. I'm going to use a right angle pick to kind of grab the air filter out of here. Just pull that out of the way. The air filter is pretty dirty, so the fact that they tell you to clean it every 50,000 miles I think is unreasonable. I'm going to use a vacuum and I'm going to suck out the stuff that's in the air box there. The clean side of the air box is up top, the dirty side is down bottom, so I'm just going to vacuum that all out, and then we're going to replace this. All right, It's important to note that air filter that they tell you to change every 50,000 miles only had 7,000 miles on it. So here's a new filter. It's a Hengst E1144L is the part number. And Hengst is an OEM supplier for Mercedes-Benz. So if you bought the Mercedes-Benz one, it would say Hengst on the side of it, or it would say MAN on the side of it, one of the two. But they are both OEM suppliers for Mercedes-Benz, so they should be treated as equivalent. We'll put this cover back on. And that's taken care of for us. Just make sure that you tuck it in right and it's not open and everything is nice and tight. All right, so that's done. Next, we're going to do the oil and the oil filter. So on this engine, our dipstick is back here. Engine oil right there. Our oil fill is right here. And our oil filter is right here. This black guy right here, my finger's on. So, the first thing that we're gonna do is we're going to drain the oil out. And the way that I do that is through the dipstick. And I use an oil evacuation system. So let me go grab that. Okay, so I have this, it's a 8-liter pneumatic fluid extractor. It connects to an air system and it either extracts or puts fluid into a system like this. I purchased it originally so that I could do a automatic transmission service on my GLK before we had this SLC. And I've just kind of kept it for this type of stuff. It works really well. And it did come with a bunch of fittings and different things that fit the different vehicles, but it is designed to be universal. So I will post a link in the description for this. This is just one that I picked up from Amazon. It's not high end, but it works fairly well. And it saves you having to jack the car up, remove the plastic liner underneath the engine, remove the drain plug, replace the gasket, all of that stuff. The drain plug's never been off this car. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this thinnest tube. It comes with 3 different tubes. The thinnest one goes right in the dipstick like this. And when it hits the bottom, we're just going to bring it up a little bit, like 1/4 of an inch. And at the end, we'll push it down in the bottom, but not having against the bottom allows this to suck a little bit better, easier. So I'm going to get this started. It's going to take a little bit, and we'll get going. All right, so this is a little loud. You can see the oil coming out here, and it's sucking through the hose and dumping down into the bottle. So this can kind of run without us babysitting it. Usually what I do when I'm doing one of these services is I start this first, and then I go and do everything else. My air filter, my cabin air filter, my spark plugs, anything else that I might happen to be doing, because this takes a little while. In this case, because I'm doing it for the camera, I'm just going to let it run, and then I'll come back and finish up when it's done. All right, it's still pumping. You can see we're about 3.5 liters out. There's a little graduation on the side of it. I will say the markings on the side aren't very accurate. Just so, again, grain of salt. This is a pretty inexpensive evacuator. There are more expensive ones out there. I don't use it very often. So I figure while this is going, I will pull out the oil filter and show you where that is. So the oil filter is actually under this black cap right here. The easiest way to get to it is you pull this air intake tube. So this disconnects here. This disconnects here. And then this kind of comes out of the way. You can also separate the air tube if you want to. Just if you do, be careful not to break this little coupling where they go together, but we can get this completely out of here. Okay. This right here is a 27 millimeter. It doesn't have to be torqued very tightly. So we're just going to kind of loosen this up a little bit. Okay. And now it's loose to the point that I can take it off by hand. So I'm just going to take this rag, kind of hold it here underneath, and loosen this up. And then this will pull right out. And this is our oil filter assembly. So, the oil filter comes off by pulling like that and taking it out. I'm going to stand this up here. So we got rid of that oil filter. I'm going to take this towel and I'm just going to kind of wipe out the reservoir, the threads. You'll see that there is a little bit of oil kind of pooled in here. And right there is where our new oil filter is going to go. So we're going to take this, we'll just kind of wipe it off. I like using microfibers for these so they don't leave a bunch of lint and fuzz and stuff like that behind. Now, we're going to open up our new oil filter. Here's our oil filter, E818H D238. This is what it looks like. Hank's product again. Like I said before, Hank's OEM's products for Mercedes. So we're going to take this and it's going to get installed just like the old one was. And you should get a nice snap into place when it gets into the bottom. So when we push it on, you should get a nice snap like that. And that is fully installed. Now, inside this kit, you will notice that there are new O-rings. So the filter comes with these O-rings. You'll see a small one, a medium one, and a very large one. So we've got our small, our medium, and our very large. These are going to be for this. So we'll grab our right angle pick. Be careful not to score this. I usually start from the furthest one back. And what we want to do is just kind of peel this off. So that comes off. Here's a new one. Just like that. I like to run my fingers around it and just kind of spread a little bit of oil on it, because my fingers are a little oily from having the shaft in my hand. So here we've got the medium size one. So we'll just kind of stretch that out and pull it up and over this lip. Like that. And then we'll do the same with the smallest one down here on the tip. So, I try to apply these by hand without using tools because I don't want to mark them up and scratch them. There's that one, and here is the frontmost one. So now we can reinstall this. So the filter just goes down into the hole. Be careful that you line that up nicely, and then I always start it by hand. Get it down to the point where it's stiff. And I will use this ratchet, and I'm just going to apply very little pressure. And it may seem silly, I'm using a 1/2 inch ratchet to install this, but it's a 27 millimeter nut. So, we want this installed. The torque setting is right here. It's 25 plus or minus 5 Newton meters. So we can get our, so here's our torque wrench set to 25. And we're going to torque this. There we are. And now that that's installed, we can reinstall our air intake tube. This side is the functional scoop, this side is the closed scoop. The reason this is blocked off like this is because this is not the 43 or the 55. This is the 300, and the 300 is not a twin, a V6 that would have 2 intakes. This only has a single intake. So that's all taken care of. I can get rid of my trash here. I can also get rid of my pick. We're done with that. One other thing that I'm going to do while I'm doing this is I'm going to check the battery. Now this isn't on the list, but I have this nice Ansell battery tester, and I've used it, I pretty much use it every time I do a vehicle service. So there's a cap here, and there's 3 of these, like they're a quarter turn, so you just kind of twist it quarter of the way and they pop up. There's 1, 2, 3, and then this lifts up and out. And then what I'm going to do is connect it to the battery, which is right here. You don't have to take that out to get to the battery, honestly, because you can do it right from the battery posts that are here, the jump posts. There's a positive here and a negative right here. But it's easy enough to take that cover off, and it lets me visually inspect the battery. So I'm going to check my battery. It's in vehicle. I'm going to do a battery test. And this is an AGM flat plate, and it is an 800 CCA, and it's got 87% life left, or 87% capacity is what it's reporting. So that's considered a good battery. I tend to check this once every time I'm doing a service on the car. That way I can kind of change the battery preemptively. Batteries are expensive. I don't want to waste money, but at the same point, I don't want to be stranded because of a battery somewhere. Especially, this is my wife's car. I don't want her to be stranded somewhere without a battery. So I check it. If it reports bad or questionable, I'll go and get it changed prematurely. The battery for this vehicle is about $300, give or take. So we've now taken about 5 liters of fluid out. It's still going. You can kind of pick this tube up a little bit and see where the level is to get an idea of how it's progressing. When you pick it up high enough, you'll see that fluid kind of stops coming out of it and it sucks air. So I still have quite a bit left. So we're going to let it run for a couple more minutes and come back. All right, so the fluid extractor is done pulling all the oil out. I generally like to kind of jiggle this tube around a little bit and see if we get any more out of it. But it's not going to get absolutely everything, and honestly neither does pulling the drain plug. So at this point we're done. I just kind of hold this up and let it all drain in so I don't end up with a mess. So now we're going to add oil. I really like this. It's a Schwaben part. It's a funnel that's specifically for Mercedes-Benz and BMW. Screws right on the fill. And then what we can do is we can take these quarts and we can dump them right in. I'm using a Liqui-Moly High-Tech 5W40, which is what the car calls for. And what's most important is that this meets the MB 229.5 approval, which is what this engine calls for. And 5. So we're going to let this sit for a minute, and then we're going to check the oil. We can see we're right below the min line right now. So just kind of let this rest, let it all run down. All right, so we are right at the min line right now. So let's open up our 6th quart. We'll start off with half of it. I keep saying quarts, these are liters. Okay, I'm about halfway up the dipstick. Let's give it the rest of that quart, and then we should be good. Now we can take this off. We can grab it with a rag, put this cap back on. We're going to put our plastic shroud back on. That goes here. And this just snaps into place like that. And then we will check our oil one last time. And you'll see there's like, it says min, line, 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 max. And I'm right at the 3rd line. So it's probably down about 1/4 of a liter. So I'm guessing those lines are 1/4, 1/2, 3/4 of a liter. So should be good to go. So now we can shut our hood, move our iPad out of the way. And we can pump our oil out of this into the catch can. So I'm going to work on that. All right, so at this point, I've emptied my fluid extractor of oil. And when I mentioned that the graduation marks on the side of it were not accurate, so the car calls for 6 liters of oil. I ordered 6 liters of oil. When extracting, my extractor showed that I pulled 6.5 liters of oil out of it. I put 6 liters in, and I'm right in between the minimum mark and the maximum mark, and I only took 5.5 liters out of the car because I filled up 5.5 containers here. So, like I said, that graduation isn't accurate. Make sure you're using the dipstick to read it. Don't just put in what you take out, and use a dipstick. That's what it's there for. So, last but not least, we have to do the cabin air filter. This is another one that's only done during the B service, so every other service, but I do it every single one because it's not that expensive, and the cabin air filter contains charcoal, and that actually removes smells and things like that from the cabin. So here is the cabin air filter. It's another Hengst filter. The part number is E2904LC. And again, I'll put links for all of these in the description. So this is a filter that folds in half. It does have an arrow on the top that points in the flow direction. So I'll show you why this is kind of bent in half. It's so that you can fit it into the canister, but let's get this changed. So we are going to go into the passenger side of the vehicle. Open the door up here, and we're going to be working in the passenger footwell. All right, so underneath here, you will see this plastic cover. So I'm going to take that off. I believe it's a T20. There's 3 screws here, so I'm going to take that off. There's 1. There's 2. And then this pulls out and down. And you kind of want to bring this down and that. And we're just gonna get it out of the way. So you can either disconnect the harnesses or you can just kind of push it out of the way. All right, so there are 2 harness plugs. This one just has a pin in the side that comes out. And this one is like a 1/4 turn, or you can unplug it either way. This is a sensor for temperature. So, what we are focusing on now is installing the filter. So, the filter goes right here. You see this part that's shaped like a V? It goes inside that. There's a white clip over here where my finger is that you push out of the way. There's another one here that you push out of the way. And this front of this box comes down. Like that. So this lid will come down, and then here is the filter. I'll show you that in a minute. But the filter is going to go back in the same way that it came out, which is just like this in a V. And then this gets tucked into place like that. Sorry, my battery went dead. So with this lid, it tucks straight back, it lifts up, and there's a white clip here and a white clip here. You do have to kind of wrestle with it a little bit. It's not the easiest thing to do. So last, we're going to put our cover back on. All right, so in summary, it's not that big of a deal to do this. It costs about $100 worth of materials. There are a couple tools that you, I don't want to say need, but they're nice to have, like that Schwaben funnel, the fluid extractor. You just need a T20, something that can drive that T20 for your air filter and stuff. I'm doing more maintenance than the car calls for, and doing it for half the price of what the dealership is charging me. So reasonably, for the price of one A service at the dealer, I can do an A service myself and buy all of the tools that I need to do additional A services in the future. So my next service becomes, you know, 80 bucks, 100 bucks, somewhere in that neighborhood for the materials. The cars aren't bad to work on. They're actually built really well. They're super nice. They go back together very well. So they're not, you know, they're not pieces of crap. They're actually built to be worked on and go back together kind of the way that they came apart. So if you're thinking about doing it, I recommend trying it. It's not that hard to do. You know, if you're on the fence and you want to pay somebody else to do it, then that's fine too. There are a lot of independents and stuff like that that would do it for less money than the dealer would. As you can see, there is a lot of stuff to be done, but a lot of it are just checks, looking over your vehicle, understanding, you know, is it leaking, is it this, is it that, are there parts that are worn, you know, and all of that. This car only has 17,000 miles on it, 16,000 miles on it. It's in really good shape. And I live in California where there's no snow or rain, hardly any rain. So it doesn't see a lot of weather or other damage. But that's really it. We're done for today. Thank you, and have a great day.